Do you have a favorite movie from your childhood? A nostalgic feeling, if you will. I've seen a lot of movies, whether it be Terminator 2, Spirited Away, or Matilda. But no other can capture the wacky sense of wonder I got from a film from 1996. A movie so completely bonkers on and off set with its crazy effects and immense talents involved. Today, I figured I'd talk about a movie I've loved since I was a kid. What is it? Well, none other than Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. What's so special about this movie, you may be asking me?
You're mumbling. We can't understand a word you're saying.
Sit back and relax as we take a little trip to Fairwater and see the ghosts that still haunt it. The Frighteners is a 1996 supernatural horror comedy film directed by Peter Jackson. He also wrote the screenplay with Fran Walsh. Before Jackson tackled the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he was known by his zany horror works such as Bad Taste and Dead Alive. It stars Michael J. Fox, Trini Alvarado, Jeffrey Combs, Dee Wallace, and Jake Busey. It tells the story of an architect turned ghostbuster, Frank Bannister, who cons people into paying him an obscene amount of money to exorcise ghosts.
Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not going to be cheap. Although I do offer a 6-month guarantee.
How much?
$450.
Even though there is enough evidence for anyone with common sense to see it's a sham.
Frank Bannister's psychic investigator?
That's right.
Well, that's a good one. How come you didn't see the corner coming? You stupid moron.
The kicker is that Frank can indeed see ghosts and also communicate with them, but uses them for his own selfish desires to scam people. During that, a health crisis takes over the town of Fairwater, with residents dying from random heart attacks. What's actually happening is the spirit of a serial killer, Johnny Bartlett, has escaped hell and dons the appearance of a Grim Reaper to continue his killing spree after death. Ultimately, Frank is thrust into this battle of good and evil while also dealing with his past, which becomes even more personal for him after finding out the crazy lovers were involved in the death of his wife years prior. Jackson and his partner, Fran, came up with the idea of this movie in 1992, around the time they were working on their script for Heavenly Creatures. They put together a 3-page film treatment that was then sent to filmmaker Robert Zemeckis, known for his films such as Beowulf, Contact, and most famously, the Back to the Future trilogy. Zemeckis' original intention was to make it a spin-off feature film off of the HBO show
Tales from the Crypt,
in the likes of Demon Knight and Bordello of Blood. After being hired by Zemeckis to write a full-length script, the duo turned in their complete screenplay early 1993. Zemeckis loved it so much that he encouraged Jackson to film it himself, with the backing coming from him and Universal Pictures. The studio provided artistic control to both Jackson and Zemeckis. Pre-production was greenlit on a $26 million budget in spring of 1994, with the decision settled on the filming in New Zealand.
A small town called Littleton, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, just outside of Christchurch, was chosen as a primary location for Fairwater, shooting any sequences that were like outside the town in the high street and in the cemetery. And so we had to find American vehicles because we drive on the other side of the road.
I think the hardest thing is the logistics of having a movie being shot halfway around the world in New Zealand. It's very hard to make a movie when it's all being done, in a 14-and-a-half-hour airplane flight away.
Principal photography began a year later, lasting from May 14th to November 16th, which is said to be one of the longest shooting schedules ever approved by Universal. According to the creators, during a meeting on the film, Michael J. Fox was the only actor considered for the role of Frank Bannister. The actor's name came up and Jackson approved, sending Fox the script shortly after. Bannister, though has some depth, isn't really a deep character.
Really? So after that, you could just see spirits? I mean,
What happened?
and seems only special based on his psychic abilities. But I still really like the character, and that could be based on the performance by Fox, who is just so likable.
It's holy water.
This isn't really much of a shock since every character he plays comes off very relatable. Marty McFly is one of my favorite characters in cinema.
Rock and roll.
Bannister was portrayed as a dead man walking, so you can get some character moments. There is a scene where, in the past, before his wife's death,
It appears that Bannister had promised Deborah a garden in the new home, and then, without consulting her, proceeded to lay a 4-inch thick concrete slab, creating a basketball court for himself.
a very rewarding moment later on in the film is when we see that Frank has turned his basketball court into a garden years later after she died. It's a small, sweet scene.
Perfectly good basketball court gone to pot.
Fox was also very supportive with the cast and crew.
You have to do it over and over again so they can get the right one.
Yeah, I know. It's silly, isn't it? You do it over and over again because, see, there's camera guys and sound guys, and there's people who are in charge of making sure that every time we do it, it looks the same. You happy, man? And there are people that are in charge of the lights, and there are people that are in charge of the cars and the people. And so what has to happen on every take is every single one of those people has to get their job done right. And usually it's my fault, and I don't get my job done right, but that's what we do. We do it every time, and every time after it's done, we look and go, are you happy, are you happy, are you happy? And if everybody gets what they want, then we can do the next thing.
Michael did many of his own stunts for the film. During one of them, in the forest shoot, he broke his foot, which they end up putting in the movie.
It was ironic that after doing so many of his own stunts, Michael finally does injure himself quite badly.
I just stepped in a place that I hadn't stepped before, and there was a hole in the floor of the forest, and just kind of twisted my ankle and popped some tendons and broke a couple bones on the bottom of my foot. Hurt like hell.
I could tell that his foot was hurting like hell, and in fact, the last shot that we did that night, he had to run along the trees, and you can see very clearly in the movie that he's limping. The next day, Michael's foot had swollen up, and he was barely able to walk.
After this incident, Jackson was able to work on the script as Fox healed for a week. Speaking on the stunts, the film had a lot. The stunt at the end involving Frank's character falling through multiple floors blew my mind as a kid. Trini developed many bruises working on set that the makeup team would take pictures for references.
I always managed to get hurt one way or another. I got some of the biggest bruises I've ever had in my entire life on this movie, and the makeup artist took pictures of them for future reference.
And on this one particular take, Trini ran across the bedroom, and the key got stuck, and she just got it out as the door slammed shut, and it would have probably broken her fingers, if she'd been a second slower.
You all right? Yeah.
Peter thought Dee was a great pick for Patricia, mainly because she was known for her sweet mom roles, such as in E.T. and Cujo. He thought the audience wouldn't believe she was a psychopath and that she was a victim instead. Her performance alongside Jake Busey, who I must say creeps me out every time he shows up on screen. It's the eyes, man. Their wild chemistry reminded me of the characters from Natural Born Killers. I also liked the supporting cast, especially the ghost characters Cyrus and Stewart, played by Shai McBride and Jim Fife.
I guess at that point, they knew that they wanted me, but they couldn't actually tell me that. So I just kind of had to keep coming back and auditioning with different guys to play Cyrus.
Victoria Burrows, our casting director, had mentioned Shai McBride's name early.
First of all, 2 reasons. Death was the best thing that ever happened to me because I had bad credit.
The character of Judge, played by John Astin, was another great addition to the movie. The drill sergeant role, played by Arlie Ermey, was written as a spoof of Ermey's other character in Full Metal Jacket.
You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. That makes me physically ill!
They didn't like how most auditions went, so they end up casting Ermey for the part anyway. And how can I forget to mention the most wacky character of them all?
I object.
Agent Dammers.
I'm wearing a lead breastplate!
Played by Jeffrey Combs, definitely the highlight performance of the film, with his oddball personality and strange look. Jackson loved Combs' work so much on the film Reanimator that he sought the actor out to see if he was still available. Combs eventually signed up, choosing to wear black contacts for the role. It was also Combs' idea to have the Hitler-inspired haircut.
Turns up in New Zealand and comes up to me, and he's got a library book.
A Wellington Public Library, and I got out some books on Hitler.
I think Dammers should have this sort of haircut, and it was the sort of Hitler haircut where he's like shaved himself around just above his ears. And he says, I think this would be a really great look for Dammers. And I thought, yeah, that's great.
By the power invested in me by the President of the United States, I am telling you to get the hell out of this room.
So that's sort of like where the haircut came in.
And the problem with Dammers is that they haven't deprogrammed him in between missions. They have given him no therapy whatsoever in the last 15 years, and the poor guy has just sacrificed his personality for his country.
He also wore 2 ear appliances and chose several tattoos for the character. Originally, the character had a swastika tattoo on his hand, but this didn't sit well with the test audiences, who claimed that the character was goofy fun up until that point, thinking he revealed himself to be a Nazi. The studio, however, ordered the tattoo to be removed for the theatrical release. It was eventually added back for the director's cut on the Blu-ray.
Doing cameos in my movies is just a fun thing I do. I had to spend most of the day dressed like this because, I have to get into my costume at the beginning of the day. And the production had also decided to bring TV crews onto the set. I didn't realize this. And so they were filming, me directing the movie, and this is the way I was dressed. And a couple of the TV items that went out didn't actually mention that this was my costume. And so I was thinking, oh no, what are my parents going to think? They're going to see this on TV and they're going to think their son has gone weird.
Am I supposed to take the director seriously when he's dressing?
Asshole.
With filming underway, challenges with time and money plagued the set. Jackson's visual company, Weta Digital, now known for its great CG and other massive films, had to expand their capacity from 1 to 35 computers in order to meet the visual demands of the film. Jackson and his team had to prove the studio on their effects.
Ultimately, it was a little hurried because we were still experimenting with how the ghost effect would look over a variety of backgrounds.
Peter got a seasoned visual supervisor, Wes Takahashi, to help on the ever-challenging effects. Weta Digital created all the effects, including scale models, even for the town they were filming in, Littleton, to make it seem more American. Weta Workshop focused primarily on the prosthetic effects. With so much work to be done, the 18-month period proved to be very stressful for the team.
Most of you don't know what's going on around here. Hold on, damn well. Sure, some of you do.
What I admire so much as a child, and even nowadays, is how they were able to pull off the ghost effects.
We kind of imagine that ghosts are transparent and they have a little glow around them. I mean, I think most people have this image of what a ghost looks like in their mind.
What are the physics of a ghost? Can it pass through objects? And if it can pass through objects, how come it can stand on the floor? And all of these had to be defined with our ghosts. And do they cast shadows? Do our shadows cast upon them?
You control various things here, like the size of his glow, how strong they were on the screen, their color, how much the background got distorted through them.
I remember being so blown away with the sequence involving Frank freezing himself so his spirit can fight Bartlett. which leads to an awesome, wacky action scene in a graveyard. For the actors, it was either an okay experience or a harsh one, acting against nothing but the air while filming.
I think the most difficult aspect of the whole motion control blue screen side of things for the actors was the timing.
It was also challenging to be attacked by ghosts and things that weren't there when they really weren't there. I was being choked by a computer graphic and just reacting to that, just choking myself, basically. I always felt like the crew was laughing at me, and I think they were.
So you as an actor now, all of a sudden, the camera's not following your moves, but you're trying to make it look like it's following your moves because it's on a preset thing. So if you're early or you're late to your mark, you know, it's, okay, we got to try it again.
The dog, Rustler, was a cute visual character, which sucks that they didn't do much with him, particularly a funny scene with a mailman.
It was where Frank goes to his mailbox and the mailman was walking away. I wanted this one shot to have the ghost, dog, Rustler, snapping at the mailman crazily like dogs do. And the closest we ever got to completing the scene was a reference shot that we did of me running around with this rubber dog.
The scenes involving ghost and human characters had to be filmed twice. One with actual actors on set, and then the ghost characters acting against blue screen. Some of this filming were large amounts of time in between with actors, having to prep even more to understand how to act with precise timing. The two sequences were then digitally composited into one shot with the use of split-screen photography. The movements with ghosts going through walls and people is just so cool to see, and behind the scenes required hard, tedious work.
One of the most common techniques was called rotoscoping, which is how you make a ghost pass through a doorway frame by frame. It's a very time-consuming and tedious process.
Peter was a big fan of mixing the CGI and puppeteer work. The Reaper was the most difficult character of the film to the creators, mostly in its design.
Someone came up with a very good idea of allowing the actor's head to protrude through the shoulders. He would wear a helmet, and then off his helmet would be a drive rod down to the head of the Reaper.
And I remember when I first got here, we devoted a couple of weeks to defining what that Reaper was supposed to be. Just trying everything possible from a character that had a positive shadow to a negative shadow on him.
He was Chrome. He was a Terminator Reaper. He, at one stage, became completely transparent, kind of a Predator Reaper. A Specular Reaper, you could only see him by his highlights. He was a Smoky Reaper, continually emitting particles when he moved. Kinetic Reaper, you could only see him, parts of him that were moving.
I think there was probably one that was like a Gray's Breakdown Reaper at one point.
I'll be spending $10,000 in 6 months explaining it all to a psychotherapist.
The heaven and hell scenes, though brief, are visually striking, with heaven having this bright, peaceful tunnel. For the look of the tunnel, Jackson said, "This tunnel of light is something that we put into our script that was kind of based on reality. There was so many people who had experiences of dying. These are people who've been revived again, so they can tell us what happened. But their experiences are all kind of similar, where they felt like they were floated out of their body, and they gone up the tunnel. They've seen loved ones, and they felt themselves leaving, pulled by the tunnel." On the other hand, the hell sequence was met with split emotions among the filmmakers, with Jackson and Walsh both disagreeing. In production, the sequence was known as The Worm. I found it nightmarish and an interesting depiction of hell. Even though time has put age on the hard work for the visuals, I still love the overkillish cartoon tone that makes it so unique. One of the big digital effects was in the scene with Judge exposing his rib cage. With the help of practical makeup on the CG, it carries a nice, melancholy blend. It was also cool to see artist Rick Baker involved in Judge's makeup process. He had to find the schedule to work on this film and Eddie Murphy's The Nutty Professor. I find the filming process in general fascinating. so it's even more magical to see it go through the digital process.
It typically takes between 1.5 to 2 gigabytes of storage space to store those elements. One shot in this facility can take as much as 10 gigabytes of storage space. A solitaire Cine 3 recorder, we actually have 2 of them in the facility. It takes about 35 to 36 seconds to actually record the finished digital image back out into film. That happens, it's queued up here by an operator, shot onto this camera. We send it off to the lab for processing and then check the print. How's that?
The film is still a wonder to look at, almost whimsical and fairy tale-ish.
You are such an asshole.
Yes, I am. I'm an asshole.
With a new scene.
With filming finally wrapped, the filmmakers had another wave of challenges presented to them. Originally meant to be a PG-13 picture, the MPAA, known to be difficult to work with, kept slapping an R rating on every cut of the film, citing one of the reasons being a door shot multiple times. Poor door. Jackson, reasonably angry at this point, since he was excessively butchering his movie for nothing, decided it didn't matter how many times he cut the film, he was not getting a PG-13 rating. So in response, he changed the death scene in the movie to be more gruesome than intended, to make the R rating more deserving.
As an agent of the United States government, I am ordering you to turn around!
Soon after both Jackson and Zemeckis failed to have the film released on October, near Halloween week, the studio was very ambitious with the project and loved it so much they secured a summer release date instead, which was obviously a bad move, causing the film to roughly make its budget back. Even though The Frighteners received positive reviews from critics, the film from that point fizzled out. A project with fun creators, good actors, and cutting-edge visual technology seemed to be all for nothing. But like other of Jackson's work, with the success of Lord of the Rings, had a second life and gathered a cult following over the years. Around 2011, a Blu-ray version for its 15th anniversary was released with all kinds of special features and with Jackson's commentary on the director's cut of the film. Jackson is known to highly document every film he works on, so it's great he was able to get so much behind the scenes that it made my job a bit easier. The bonus features also talked about cut content, such as characters who didn't make it into the film, like the weird baby called the Gatekeeper.
All I knew was this big rubber baby with this little voice that would say, you know, I can't see Charlie, 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 I need to come down now. And it was bizarre, and I don't know if I ever met that person. But I had this relationship with her, you know. I felt like I had to take care of her because she could a lot of times couldn't speak and couldn't get her ideas across, but she was this big rubber baby person.
It even had a good amount of bloopers, with my favorite one being when Michael would mix the Judge character up with Doc from Back to the Future.
Little crook in the Pony Express, huh, Doc? Whoa! I called him Doc. It's fucking Back to the Future.
This movie is one of my favorites. There was just so many things memorable and dazzling about it, and to see how it was put together made it even more of a wonder. This would sadly be Fox's last leading role in a film, as shortly after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He then semi-retired from acting for some time to focus on his condition. However, it wasn't enough to stop the actor, as he took voice roles such as Stuart Little, and has appeared in well-received shows like Scrubs, and most recently, Designated Survivor. I'm glad he's still staying active and continuing his fight against Parkinson's. It was such a fun and hard process to cover this film, and hopefully you kind of got something out of it. And if you're a fan of the film, I hope I covered enough for you to enjoy. If you haven't seen the film and find it interesting, please give it a watch sometime. It was a pleasure making this. I hope you all have a great day, and always remember, don't fear the Reaper.
I'll see you, Frank. Bye-bye.